So as we continue working on our sides, front and back, or our long sides, we see that we've cut them to length and we followed the note that they should fit snugly into the sides of my leg assembly. Then we have another note here that deals with these rabbets along both of the edges. What happens is if we flip back to the main subassembly, we can see that the short ends fit with inside those rabbets of our long ends. So all I need to do is cut a rabbet on both of our ends. So we're going to be making vertical rabbets. And if we read the note, it says the width of this rabbet will be the same thickness as your sides. So we know the thickness of our plywood, so that's going to tell us the width of the blade, how much blade needs to be exposed. Now we have our height here. So the overall height is 3/4 of an inch, and we need to leave 0.375 inches of material. So the amount of material that should be remaining is 0.375. So we have to do the math and figure out how high the blade needs to be. Because what ends up happening is we're going to be sending our long sides through this way. So if we turn this up back so we can see, according to our plan, or I actually lay this back down, our plan says that the width needs to be the same amount as our the thickness of our short side. So that's going to give us the width of the blade. The height is going to give us of the blade is going to give us that 3/4 of an inch minus 0.375. So that'll tell you the height of that. So when you get this, the first thing you want to do is check to make sure that your miter guide is square with the fence, okay? Because it kind of gets kicked around a little bit, and people take it out, or other classes move it for another reason. So you want to check to make sure that it's square to the fence. So once we have that, make sure it's square. You can set that aside, and we want to start setting up our blade and our guide, our table and everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the height. I'm going to get it about close. So again, based off those measurements that I took, and making sure that I get to the top of that arc, about there. And we talked about the width is the same thickness. And we know the thickness of our plywood. So I'm going to adjust this to about where it should be. And again, remember that since it's an older one, we want to double check to make sure that that fence is tight. Excuse me. Another thing you may notice is that it says you have to take off the same thickness as our material, but there's not enough blade exposed. I mean, the blade's only about 3/8 of an inch. We need to take off more than that. Well, you want to measure from the fence to the outside of the blade, because we can take multiple passes. It's just how our stop is set up. Okay, so that's all we're doing is we're setting up a stop for our board. If we think about it like this, if I have my material here and I send it through, nothing's going to get taken off. And the closer I move it in, the more material is going to take off. So if I go through again, it's not close enough, well, no material is being taken off. So I have to bring it back, and I have to end up taking off some material, and I'm going to keep moving it closer and closer to the fence until I can't go any further. So the fence is really going to be the stop, and that's going to determine how wide our rabbet needs to be. Now we just spent all our time sanding and cutting our long sides to length. So what we're going to do is before we screw up those, we're going to test it on a piece of scrap material. And that's all you need to do is just find something in the bin, and we're going to get it about close, and then we'll test that, and we'll go from there. Okay, so we know the thickness of our blade. So when we turn it like this, what we're going to be measuring is we're going to be measuring from this face to the new face that we just created. And if we look at that, it's a little thick. So I'm just going to adjust it back down a little bit. And now in order to check, I know what the measurement is supposed to be, but I want to check that the material itself from the manufacturer is the same thickness as what the sheet says. So one way I can do that by checking is to take a piece of my side, and if we notice here, well, I have a little bit too much blade exposed. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's a little lip right here, and I can feel it. And what you want to do is make sure that it's nice and flush, that the face of your board is flush with your end. So we want to have something it's not too much exposed, so there's a lip on there, or too little, so that there's also a dip. So you can kind of see here, if I have too little of the blade exposed, that's my fence is too far away. If I should say my fence is too close to the blade, and if there's a lip on the side, you have too much exposed. So this tells me that I need to bring my fence in, and I've already lowered my height. So I need to bring it in just a little bit. Again, checking to make sure it's tight. Go ahead and make another pass. So I'll double check the height of my blade, and that's good there. So again, the height deals with how much material is removed. And then I'm going to grab my long side again, and I should be able to press that tight up against in there, and it's nice and flush. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead on both of my long sides. I'm going to be making my cuts here. Again, if we notice that we have kind of the lower quality face here, and we have a little bit higher quality. Since this is the higher quality side, I want to make sure that that face is out. Because the only time we're going to see this is when we actually open up our box and we can look down in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the bad side is facing down. And I have some splinters here that I have to take care of. So in order to keep this moving, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one again. Nice side faces up, inside faces down. So again, we have those knots and everything like that. So all I'm going to do is make these cuts, and then we'll be on to our next step.